But first, the election and the race for the second Senate spot in the ACT. The polls are showing Labor's Kate Lundy will be returned, but Liberal Senator Gary Humphries is in for a tight race against Greens candidate Lin Hatfield-Dodds. This week, Stateline gave those three candidates a chance to make their pitch. The moderator is someone they all know very well, 666 breakfast host Ross Solly.
We put some polling out into the public space yesterday that show that 1 in 4 Canberrans are committed to voting Green on the 21st of August. We think that shows there's a fair momentum behind those numbers. What it says to us, though, and I think what it says to Canberra, is there are a lot of Canberrans who are tired of being taken for granted. There are a lot of Canberrans who are worried about the acts that Tony Abbott's got poised at the public service. A lot of Canberrans looking for leadership, significant leadership in a smaller balance of power party.
Now, Senator Humphries, you're quite dismissive of this polling, but just word of mouth, does it not reflect what the Green poll is showing?
No, it doesn't. No, I'm quite confident that that does not reflect what's going on in Canberra. The Greens have form on producing dodgy polling just before an election, demonstrating that they've all but won the seat. And when election day comes around, it's a very different story. So I don't sense that what this poll says is true. But the big poll, of course, is on the 21st.
Well, you, Senator Lundy, when you saw that poll, did you think, that could be right, or...?
I get a lot of feedback about climate change. I think it's something Canberrans are very concerned about. I think the Greens will do it tough here in trying to wrest the Senate seat away from Senator Humphries, just because, come polling day, that hasn't been the pattern. 12 months ago, maybe a little bit longer, there was consensus across all political parties that we had to address climate change and put a price on pollution. Since then, Abbott has become leader. The Liberal Party have walked away from that commitment, and both the Greens and the Liberals voted down Labor's proposal for a price on carbon in the Senate. We're left with pretty much a mess and a political system that was unable to deliver a result to tackle climate change in this country.
Are you worried that might hurt you? That might hurt you, the fact that you are being portrayed as blockers of an ETS program?
I'm no climate change denier. I, as Environment Minister in the ACT, put forward Australia's first emissions targets, later abandoned by a Labor government locally. I believe in climate change, and I'm proud to say that today, of the major parties, only a Liberal government can get Australia to a 5% reduction in emissions by 2020. Labor's plans for its silly People's Assembly idea will not get us to the 5% reduction by 2020.
Lin Hatfield-Dodds, is this a vote-changing issue, do you think, in the ACT?
Oh, absolutely, it's a vote-changing issue. I don't believe the test was set in the Parliament. The test is set on the planet, on the surface of the planet, in our river systems, in our soils, in our atmosphere. A 5% target is laughable. The science is clearly telling us 5% is seriously deficient. The Greens put 22 amendments on the table. The Labor government wasn't interested in negotiating. We're the only political party with a plan to put a price on carbon in this next parliamentary term.
There have been representatives from both of your parties who have said publicly that the public service will have to be trimmed or that efficiencies will be found. Now, how do you go out there into the electorate, look those voters in the eye and say that their jobs will be safe under a returned Labor government or under a coalition government or under some form of a Greens coalition? Gary Humphries, do you want to start?
We know that the next budget is going to be tough. We know whoever brings that budget down is going to have to make some hard decisions. And I think that it's very clear that Canberra will be targeted in that process because both sides of government know that there have to be decisions made to reduce spending. And spending involves the size and the vitality of the public service to some degree. We're going to do it without sacking people from their jobs. And I'm hoping that we can get a consensus that happens in every case. And any government that forms will not cut people's jobs that have them at the moment.
So, but you will reduce the size of the public service, though?
Very clearly. Very clearly we'll do that. We want to save the equivalent of nearly $4 billion through reducing the public service by about 12,000 positions. Of course, that won't all be in Canberra. 2/3 of the public service lie outside the ACT.
While you say that, not all public service jobs are in Canberra, and that's true, half of all jobs in Canberra are public sector jobs. And the other half of the economy are businesses that are either completely dependent or secondarily dependent on the public service for their livelihood. So these kind of cuts, these kind of axes to the public service are going to impact every household and every business in the ACT.
Kate Lundy?
Look, a couple of things here. First of all, I think Canberrans have a strong memory of what John Howard said prior to being elected in 1996, which is there would be some jobs going through a recruitment freeze, natural attrition. So there is no trust in the Canberra community when the Liberals offer these passive statements about natural attrition. John Howard said there would be a couple of thousand jobs go. 30,000 people specifically were retrenched over the next 3 years. So I don't believe the Liberals when they say there won't be any job cuts.
I think most people expect that whoever wins government will be negotiating with minor parties in the Senate to get whatever policies they get through. Isn't what Lin Hatfield-Dodds has faced going to be also facing both of the major parties as well? You're going to have to negotiate. There are going to have to be compromises. There are things that have been promised in this campaign that will never see the light of day because they'll never get through the Senate.
Our experience, unfortunately, negotiating with the Greens in government, in the previous government, was we got very little from the Greens. The Greens take an approach which says we want everything that we've asked for or there's no deal. And they're not very good at compromising. So unfortunately, I don't expect to be negotiating anything with the Greens if we end up in government with them in the balance of power in the Senate, sadly.
Well, I'd point to our track record in the Senate. I'd point to us negotiating improvements to the stimulus package. I'd point to us negotiating improvements to the age pension, $30 a week. They're things that we negotiated with the government of the day that happened to be the Labor Party that are of immediate and direct benefit to the Australian population.
Post-election, have you talked with both your leaders about whether they will be moving into the Lodge? Because this is an issue very important to Canberrans. They want the Prime Minister to live in the Lodge. A lot of them felt disappointed when John Howard didn't live here. Senator Humphries, first of all to you, have you spoken to Tony Abbott? Will he live in the Lodge if he is elected Prime Minister?
I have spoken to him about it, and I've implored him to consider that very important symbolic step, and I hope that he will, but only time will tell.
That doesn't sound very confident. Is he unlikely to leave Manly, is he? Or?
He's going to do a John Howard.
Well, I don't know, but I've said I think he should live in the Lodge. I've put my point of view to him. That's the best I can do.
Senator Lundy, will Julia Gillard take up residence in the Lodge?
Yes.
Cast iron guarantee?
Yes.
There we go. All right, let's finish. You've got a minute and a half each just to tell us and tell the viewers tonight why, in just over a week's time, they should be voting for you when they go in to vote for the Senate. Senator Lundy?
Well, first of all, the Federal Labor Party has demonstrated in government that we are able to keep a stable employment base in the Commonwealth public sector. We have a blueprint for reform of the APS to make sure our public sector remains the strongest. I think we're the best performing in the world. We want to keep it there. We also have an incredible record of investment here in the Canberra community with some $280 million in capital investment in our schools. You can go to just about every single school in Canberra and see a physical improvement in the environment, and that's had a wonderful effect and complements our further policies to create incentives for schools to improve their literacy outcomes and so forth. I also want to talk about health reform. I think education and health are very important to the people of Canberra, and our national health reform process has resulted in many, many tens of millions of dollars being invested in Canberra in our health system, including a $30 million cancer centre, so people won't have to travel to get the sort of quality treatment that they require through a very difficult time in their lives.
Senator Humphries.
Look, I know that Canberra is a Labor town and that the Labor Party dominates the local scene here in terms of votes that are cast for it. But I want to ask Canberrans to consider what they would lose if there was no coalition senator representing the ACT. We have a federal Labor government, we've got a state Labor government, we have 3 of the 4 representatives of the ACT are Labor representatives. Where would Canberra be if it didn't have a voice inside whatever role the Liberal Party will play in the next Parliament? If Canberra votes to have a Green senator instead of a Liberal senator, we'd be the only Australians anywhere on this continent who would not be able to access both the government of the day and the opposition of the day when big decisions get made. And if you want someone to stand up against, for example, a Labor government making mistakes, you really have to have a person with a track record of doing that. You can't have a person whose party has a track record of supporting the Labor Party at the state level, territory level, and on the floor of the Senate, voting with the Labor Party 80% of the time when the two parties are divided. If the Liberal Party's in opposition, you still need that voice inside the Parliament arguing for the people of the ACT when the Labor government makes mistakes, and as we all know, it makes those mistakes. Any government makes mistakes. It needs someone to hold it to account, not a person who sees themselves essentially as the lapdog of the Labor Party in government.
And Lin Hatfield-Dodds, finally.
I would love Canberrans, those who haven't already decided, to think about voting Green and voting for me on the 21st of August, next Saturday. I do have experience in lobbying very successfully Labor and Liberal governments over the last decade as I've worked in the community sector. But the Greens stand for a progressive approach to Australian politics. We stand for climate change. We stand for a better deal for people and communities. We stand for a strong and sustainable economy. We care about people. We think long term. We care about the environment. That's why I would like people to vote Green in the Senate this year.
Well, as we know, 3 into 2 doesn't go, so good luck to the three of you, and may it be close so that we've got something to be really interested in on Saturday night, and best of luck to all of you.
Thanks, Ray.